cherries bloom, Kyoto sings all day long, rising melodies to the sun. Blossoms awake to the gladness of song. See them smile and greet everyone. When the cherries bloom, Kyoto sings all day long, rising melodies to the sun. Blossoms awake to the gladness of song. See them smile and greet everyone. Tell me, little sisters, what have you to say? Live your life as perfectly as this perfect day. When the cherries bloom, Kyoto sings all day long, rising melodies to the sun. Blossoms awake to the gladness of song. See them smile and greet everyone.
Cherry blossoms in Kyoto has an interesting origin. As I've heard this story told by other people who were around at the time, there was a World Brotherhood Day celebration at Ananda village, and the singers were planning to perform a number of the international songs from Ananda music, pieces that Swami Kriyananda had written over the years to reflect the moods of a variety of different nationalities, many of whom he had either visited or participated in himself. These were songs like A New Tomorrow, reflecting the spirit of modern Israel, selections from Romanian Memories, from Mediterranean Magic that has an Italian feel, things from songs of Shakespeare for the British Isles, and also from the Egyptian suite. And of course various pieces from India that he's written as well. Now just before the event, as I heard, a few people were talking with him about drawing creative inspiration at will, maybe reminiscing back to how somebody asked that question of Yogananda a long time ago, and he on the spot came up with the poem God, God, God. Well, they were talking with Kriyananda about this, and Kriyananda said that he could, well, just sit down and write a Japanese melody, because we didn't have any music with an Asian feel to it other than India, which is unique in its own way. And so he sat down at a piano and Cherry Blossoms in Kyoto just came out. In a way, he made the music very simple on himself. He played only the black keys, starting from the F sharp. It's when the cherries bloom. That's the first 5 black notes starting with the F sharp. And then Kyoto sings all day long. It's just a very simple melody just on those black keys. And really, he just went up and down the black keys and made a beautiful melody. And thus was born this lovely song with a harmony part that he then added later. Now, Cherry Blossoms in Kyoto is very much a song about calmness and expansive cheerfulness. You can imagine a Japanese garden in springtime when all the cherry trees are in bloom. And the city of Kyoto in Japan, in fact, is very famous for its cherry blossoms and hosts an annual cherry blossom festival. So much so, in fact, that there's a real forecasting business to really try to predict year to year when the best cherry blossoms will be visible, because many blossoms last only for a few days. And so if you want to catch that peak of the blossoms, then you need to know exactly when to arrive. It's very appropriate too that Yogananda, when he assigned various fruits to spiritual qualities, I should say assigned spiritual qualities to various fruits. When he looked at the cherry, he assigned it the quality of cheerfulness. And it's something that you can even enjoy today in what are called Master's Flower Essences, which are produced by my neighbor here at Ananda Village, Leela Devi. that helps just engender that kind of consciousness within you. And of course, Cherry Blossoms in Kyoto then has that exact kind of vibration with, just that first opening line, when the cherries bloom, Kyoto sings all day long, rising melodies to the sun. Now, flowers and blossoms in the natural world inherently seek the sun. If you watch them during the day, they will in fact turn to follow the sun. But inwardly, what we're talking about in this song is the expansive calmness of the throat chakra reaching up to the sun of the spiritual eye, which is of course perceived as a star, but then stars themselves are in fact suns, or better yet to say, our sun is itself a star. The rising energy also passes through the medulla oblongata here, the seat of the ego at the base of the brain, which serves as it passes to calm the ego and help it to feel a vibration of contentment. And we can really say that contentment is the primary vibration of this song. It calms the desires and ambitions of the ego to allow it to rest in that contentment. And for this reason, then, the song naturally works as an antidote for that quality of discontentment. Now, the next phrase in the song of the lyrics suggests that, as Yogananda put it, to really be a smile millionaire. He says, blossoms awake to the gladness of song. These are the lyrics. Blossoms awake to the gladness of song. See them smile and greet everyone. When you're content in yourself, when you're happy in yourself, it's completely natural to share that peace and joy with everyone around you through your simple smiles and kindnesses. Make me thou a smile millionaire, Yogananda wrote in Whispers from Eternity, that I may scatter thy riches, scatter thy rich smiles in sad hearts freely everywhere. Even more specifically, the third phrase of Cherry Blossoms in Kyoto encourages us then to be completely in the present, like the blossoms. Tell me, little sisters, what have you to say? And then their response is, live your life as perfectly as this perfect day. Their message is to say, you don't need to strive and try so hard. You don't need to reach outside of yourself for fulfillment, nor do you need to put off your happiness into the future or make your happiness somehow conditional on new circumstances or new possessions or some other ego-pleasing change in the world around you. Now think again for a minute about those cherry blossoms. Like I said, they really only last at their peak for a few days, which is typical of most flowers. They bloom, they do their job, and then they wither. And that's again why being able to forecast their peak is such a big business in Kyoto for the festival there. So the blossoms, with this in mind, are really saying to us, like the song There's Joy in the Heavens, that we've only this moment to live, this perfect moment of beautiful blossoms that's here right now. So don't waste time thinking about the future or brooding on the past. Be in the moment. Don't try to cling to what's happening in the moment either, to try to bottle it up and preserve it somehow for the future. Those blossoms, again, they know their time is very short, so they make the most of it, smiling and greeting everyone as much as they possibly can during just those few days they have. In fact, they also remind us that the experience of perfection itself comes through the experience of joy in the moment, and that is, in fact, what we're always seeking through all our striving, through all our ambitions, through all those desires. We're trying to find that beautiful happiness in the moment, that joy in the moment. And so the blossoms are saying, be in the moment, and then you can let go of all those ambitions and all those desires and experience the joy you're looking for right here and right now. Now, what's very interesting about Cherry Blossoms in Kyoto as a song is that musically, it also expresses this contentment in the way its its chords or lack thereof might be said. Now, many songs use what's called a chord progression, and that's where you start with a root chord like this, and then you might go to a fourth chord, then a fifth, and then back to the root again. So there's a progression. and you might throw a minor in there, or a seventh, or a ninth, or something like that. There's usually what you get in music through a chord progression is a kind of journey of some kind where there's different emotional overtones. You have things, discords like sevenths and ninths that then beg to be resolved in some way. You can't just do this, and then do a seventh, and then end the song there, unless you really want to end with a question. But that seventh note right there wants to be resolved back into the root chord again. So, like I said, most songs through chord progressions express a journey of some kind. Well, Cherry Blossoms in Kyoto is rather unique among the different pieces of Ananda music we have, in that it has just one chord. Now technically it's got two chords, but it's this chord here, which is, it's a C chord played with a capo. So you have the C, and then you have, let me get it right here. If I can do it correctly, here we go. There's the C chord, and then it's relative minor, the A minor. So you got, when the cherries bloom, Kyoto sings all day long, rising melodies to the sun. Blossoms awake to the gladness of song. See them smile and greet everyone. Tell me, little sisters, what have you to say? Live your life as perfectly as this perfect day. And that's all it does. It just goes back and forth between that major chord and its relative minor. Now, the major and the relative minor are really two sides of the same chord. They're like two sides of the same coin. They always they go together, because going between a C and an A minor doesn't progress the chord at all. It just goes major to minor. And every chord has its relative minor like that. So the bottom line here is that because there's just this one chord in the song, Cherry Blossoms in Kyoto isn't trying to go anywhere. There's no journey to speak of. And that's how it's really saying, giving you that idea of perfect contentment in the moment. Because there's no progression, there's no journey, there's no hanging out waiting to be resolved, even like the typical progression. That still wants to be resolved in some way, and it comes back. So we don't have that. And that's what really makes this song work, is that simple contentment, even expressed in the chords. And you might also say just the non-ambition of it. And that's why the song then also works as an antidote for ambition, especially world or egoic ambition, as well as complexity, because it's very simple in its message. It's very simple musically. And so if you're wrapped up in all these complexities of trying to figure this out and trying to figure that out and this out, and that, just come back to that simple contentment of beingness that the cherry blossoms express. In fact, the track we just heard expresses these qualities really well, because the performers really aren't trying to do anything fancy, nor are they trying to add anything to the piece of their own ideas. Now, I've heard a number of recordings and other performances of this song over the years where, sometimes an instrumental arrangement, people will swell and fade the volume somewhat or add little trills to the melody, especially when being played on a flute. It's very tempting to do that because it can be fun and entertaining, but it adds an unnecessary complexity, as well as, you might say, a kind of ambition or desire to the piece. And the same is true as if it's performed at a tempo that's really too fast, because you need to get it back to that point of contentment, of calmness, of peacefulness, of simplicity. And if you try to go too fast, then you sort of push it forward. You push it into ambition somewhat. I heard another recording in two which included a harp on it, and the performance gradually, which is often happens in music for good reason, when there is a journey, there's often a building of energy, even an ambitious building, to the point where you then want to sort of resolve that in a kind of climax. But in this song, well, in the recording I heard, they did that with Cherry Blossoms in Kyoto, where the harp on the last segment was playing rather rapid and complex arpeggiations, adding a lot more notes. But really, for me, these kinds of contrasts in different interpretations, although they help to clarify what you shouldn't do, really, in a way, take away from the underlying vibration of the song. It's really underscored for me that as a performer of Ananda music, the most important question is always is not to ask, how do I want to play this piece or perform this piece, but to really say, how does this piece itself want to be expressed? And so when you tune into a song like Cherry Blossoms in Kyoto, tune into its contentment, its peacefulness, its simplicity, its joy in the present moment. You don't need to add any of those other things. You need to be deep in the vibration of that simplicity and that contentment. And we'll hear this in the second track that I'll play in a few moments, which is a piano instrumental that I think expresses the qualities of this song very well. Now, whatever the case may be here in performances, the lyrics, when it's typically performed, we have the first verse of the lyrics, the "When the cherries bloom, Kyoto sings all day long," that rising melody, which is explicit in the second line. You hear, "When the cherries bloom, Kyoto sings all day long." It easily brings the energy rise, and you feel the rising melody even as it's saying in the lyrics. You feel the energy rising from the throat chakra to touch the spiritual eye here. And then after that whole verse is completed through, there's a harmony part that joins in. It doesn't start that way, but there's a harmony that joins in after you brought the energy up here, which is very much like singing with a partner, singing with the higher self at that point. It's interesting here that in most songs, the harmonies are used to deepen the feelings of the heart. That's typically the purpose of harmony. But in Cherry Blossoms here, the song never actually goes down to the heart at all. It's really up here in the upper chakras. And so that's why singing the harmony is more resonant with singing with the higher self here at the spiritual eye, rather than deepening the feelings in the heart. And it's that combination that then is able to be expansive in a way that helps you experience greater joy without necessarily expanding into ambition. Now think about that for a moment, because when we often think of reaching for joy or striving for joy or inner happiness, we are setting ourselves, giving ourselves an ambition of some kind, setting ourselves on a journey. But this song isn't about a journey, and so the expansiveness comes by going deeper into the present moment rather than, again, reaching outside of ourselves or setting goals. It's really about deepening that presence right here and right now. So that energy flowing upward from the throat chakra to the spiritual eye doesn't stop in the medulla, where it might get wrapped up in personal ambitions. But yet the calm expansiveness that's being energized in a way helps soothe the ego at the medulla to calm its ambitions, to relax away from its desires into that vibration of contentment. And this is the thought that's expressed in day 21 of Secrets of Emotional Healing, to which Swami Kriyananda assigned this song. He said the secret of overcoming greed is contentment. Now, greed is a more powerful, you might say, more powerful expression of discontent, right? That goes out and really tries to grasp rather than just being unhappy with your present circumstance. It goes out and tries to do something about it. But he says the secret of overcoming greed is contentment, harmonious feelings in the heart. Affirm mentally, I am complete in myself. I am whole. I am free from all anxiety and need. Contentedly, I accept whatever comes, at the same time doing my best to achieve my valid goals. Now, I have to admit that years ago, when I first heard the idea of music antidotes and heard this assignment of greed, Cherry Blossoms in Kyoto as an antidote for greed, I just couldn't understand it, because I was just thinking about it too intellectually and hadn't even read this saying from Secrets of Emotional Healing. I was thinking only of the lyrics, thinking only of the outward meanings, and couldn't fathom why cherry blossoms would somehow have anything to do with greed, or an antidote for greed. But once I made that connection to the deep feeling of contentment in the song, it made perfect sense. So now what's also important in the Secret's saying and in the song itself is that contentment doesn't mean life has to be dull and uninteresting and just sort of what we might call a tamasic kind of contentment, where you want nothing and never strive for anything, and just kind of sink lower and lower. You still can have valid goals, in fact, and the cherry blossoms here awake to the gladness of song, as the lyrics say, which is the song of inner peace and inner joy, which are the true goals of every soul to begin with. As Yogananda said, being desireless, be yet very ambitious for God. Now, in this context, I've been also thinking lately of a line in Yogananda's poem Samadhi, where he says, "Tranquil, unbroken thrill, eternally living, ever new peace." And what's been striking me about that is that juxtaposition, you might say, of the word tranquil and thrill. Tranquil, unbroken thrill. Because when we think of thrill, we usually think of excitement, right? We think of the jumping up and down and the very outward kinds of energy that you might see with children, especially in like advertisements for Disneyland or other amusement parks. But here Yogananda says tranquil, unbroken thrill, which means a thrill that is perfectly calm, yet intensely and continuously joyful. And that's, I think, what Cherry Blossoms is trying to get us to feel more and more deeply. Yogananda, too, often talked about how God smiles at us through the flowers, as in this following excerpt from the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. He says, "In the flowers, God suggests to our minds His infinite beauty. In the flowers and blossoms, with their fragrance and their colorful quilts of petals, God smiles invitingly, as if to tell us, 'Remember me.'" And flowers, of course, like I've said, are very short-lived, sometimes lasting for maybe even only a few hours. But think of what they accomplish in that brief existence. Flowers, through their fragrant smiles, you might say, attract the life energy of the pollen through pollinators like bees, so that what they can do is then get pollinated and eventually bear fruits of sweetness. So our smiles, too, attract life energy from others that also turns into sweet fruits of friendship and kindness and love and beauty. So let's now enjoy that piano arrangement of Cherry Blossoms in Kyoto.